Imagine a world teetering on the edge of the familiar, a place where the fabric of the everyday begins to unravel, revealing glimpses of the extraordinary lurking beneath. You're about to embark on a journey into the enigmatic, where the peculiar and the perplexing intertwine, where every tale twists the mind and tugs at the spirit. It's a descent into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. This is When Reality Frays. New episodes are published every Monday and Thursday, and When Reality Frays is available everywhere fine podcasts are found. Before we move on, please hit that follow or subscribe button and turn on all reminders so you're alerted when new episodes are released. Today's episode contains one story titled The Fractured Echo. It's the tale of a man who dared to question whether our memories are actually our own. Now, let's get to the story. Meet Adam Greaves, a reporter chasing the cutting edge of technology, now holding a key to a door he was never meant to open. In the shadows of Cape Town, where science dared to rewrite the rules of reality, a single memo unveils a fracture in time itself. Tonight, Adam will learn that some truths are better left buried, as he steps into a realm where the past is a lie, the present is a dream, and the future is nothing but a frayed reality. This is the story of the Fractured Echo. In the oppressive heat of a late summer evening in 2019, Adam Greaves sat hunched over a chipped formica table in a desolate roadside diner on the outskirts of Cape Town, South Africa. The air was heavy with the acrid tang of grease and the faint buzz of a dying fluorescent light flickering overhead. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched a single memo that seemed to pulse with a dangerous energy of its own. The document bore the unmistakable letterhead of the South African Quantum Initiative, SAQI, a governmental entity so obscure it barely registered in public records. The header, typed with cold mechanical precision, read Quantum Divergence Event. As Adam's eyes traced the words, the din of the diner, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of a lone trucker at the counter, faded into a distant hum. The memo detailed Operation Echo Chronos, a clandestine experiment launched in the late 1990s to stabilize geopolitical timelines through quantum manipulation. But in 2007, something had gone catastrophically wrong, unleashing a distortion field that fractured the fabric of reality and giving rise to a phenomenon the world would later call the Mandela Effect, a ripple of collective false memories that defied history itself. Adam had never been one to indulge in conspiracies. As a writer for a small publication in Pretoria, his life had been a quiet rhythm of routine spent in the sterile glow of fluorescent-lit rooms. His work was a sanctuary of facts about the unbelievably rapid advancements in technology. But that sanctuary had been shattered 3 weeks prior when a colleague, her face pale and eyes darting with nervous energy, had slipped a memo across his desk. Her voice barely above a whisper, she had urged him to read it. Since that moment, Adam's world had tilted on its axis, the memo's contents burning into his mind like a brand. It described how the SAQI experiment had created a burst of energy that overlapped timelines like shards of broken glass, causing subtle discrepancies at first, shifted dates in public records, minor inconsistencies in historical documents, but soon escalating into something far more unsettling. People across the globe began recalling events that never happened. Nelson Mandela dying in a South African prison in the 1980s, while others knew he had been released in 1990, lived to become president in 1994, and passed away in 2013. The memo called it a ripple effect, a distortion field that had bled into the collective consciousness And Adam couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding a key to a truth that could unravel everything he thought he knew. That night, as he drove back to his small apartment in Pretoria, his headlights slicing through the inky blackness of the highway, Adam's mind churned with questions that gnawed at his sanity. The road stretched endlessly before him, flanked by barren fields that seemed to whisper secrets in the dark. He tried to rationalize the memo as an elaborate fabrication, a prank perhaps, or a piece of speculative fiction. But doubt clawed at him, its talons sharp and unrelenting. The document's authenticity felt irrefutable. The Saki insignia, a stylized double helix encircled by a laurel wreath, matched symbols he had seen in other government records. The bureaucratic syntax with its dry, precise language was unmistakable, and the reference to classified facilities, like a research outpost near Cape Town, aligned with fragments of information he had stumbled across in his years covering the tech industry. If the Mandela Effect wasn't just a quirk of human memory, if it was the fallout of an actual event, what did that mean for the nature of reality? Sleep was infrequent in the weeks that followed, Adam's nights consumed by a feverish search for answers that left his small apartment in disarray. His desk, once an orderly shrine to his work, was now buried under a chaotic sprawl of academic papers on quantum mechanics, printouts from shadowy conspiracy forums, and scribbled notes on yellow legal pads. He pored over obscure scientific journals, finding tangential references to a quantum anomaly that caused fluctuations in observed reality, dismissed by mainstream academics as pseudoscience. He uncovered government filings that listed Saki as an atmospheric research group, its stated purpose so benign it seemed designed to deflect scrutiny. But the more he dug, the more the pieces painted a picture that was anything but innocuous. A shadowy network of experiments, hidden facilities, and a truth that threatened to upend the very foundation of existence. Frustration mounted as his search hit one dead end after another, the answers remaining just out of reach, tantalizingly close, yet shrouded in secrecy. Desperate for a breakthrough, Adam decided to reach out to Marcia Tilson, a retired intelligence operative who had become an unlikely friend after a chance meeting at a tech summit in Johannesburg 3 years earlier. He drove to her modest suburban home on the city's outskirts, the late afternoon sun casting long, ominous shadows across her neatly trimmed lawn. Marcia greeted him at the door with a cautious warmth, her graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, her demeanor still shadowed by the secrecy of her past career. She had spent decades working in intelligence, her assignments cloaked in layers of classified operations, and though she had retired, the weight of those years still lingered in her sharp, assessing gaze. When Adam handed her the memo, she read it in silence, her expression shifting from skepticism to a grim recognition that sent a chill racing down his spine. She admitted to hearing whispers during her tenure, rumors of black-budget experiments involving quantum manipulation conducted in hidden facilities across South Africa. The name Echo Chronos stirred a faint memory, though the details were fragmented, lost to the haze of classified briefings and the passage of time. Her warning was clear and unwavering, however. If this was real, Adam was treading on dangerous ground, and those behind it would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. Armed with Marcia's insight, Adam's investigation took him to Cape Town, where Saki's official headquarters stood amongst a cluster of corporate towers in the city's financial district. The building was a sleek monolith of glass and steel, its reflective facade blinding in the midday sun, a stark contrast to the murky secrets it concealed. Posing as a researcher working on a historical survey of atmospheric science, Adam requested access to Saki's public archives, but his inquiries were met with cold deflections, vague explanations about ongoing studies, bureaucratic red tape, and restricted access to sensitive data. The organization felt like a ghost, a bureaucratic placeholder with no substance, its true purpose hidden behind layers of misdirection. He left the building empty-handed, the glass doors sliding shut behind him with a hiss, but his resolve had only hardened. If Saki wouldn't yield its secrets willingly, he'd find another way. Adam began working his network of contacts, asking circumspect questions that were intended to elicit the information he wanted, while also providing him with the protection of plausible deniability. Piecing together the information he had gathered pointed him toward a rumored clandestine research facility on the outskirts of Cape Town. This was supposedly a place where the real work of Saki had been conducted, far from prying eyes. Adam spent days tracking down leads, piecing together additional fragments of information, poring over old maps, and diving into cryptic posts on conspiracy forums. His search led him to a desolate stretch of land beyond the city, where the urban sprawl gave way to barren fields and a sky heavy with the threat of rain. He made the drive with a sense of foreboding, the road narrowing as it wound through a landscape that felt abandoned by time. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath his tires and the distant cry of a lone bird circling overhead. He knew he had arrived when he encountered a chain-link fence that stretched endlessly, adorned with faded signs warning of radiation hazards and the dire consequences of trespassing. Beyond the fence, a cluster of low, angular buildings, their concrete surfaces dull and unwelcoming as if designed to repel curiosity. He parked his car in a secluded spot off the road, hidden behind a cluster of gnarled shrubs, and approached the fence on foot, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The fence was 12 feet tall with coils of razor wire at the top. Disheartened, he stood looking through the fence at the distant buildings for several minutes. Changing his focus to the fence, he noticed for the first time that it wasn't in the best of repair. The chain link was loose, the clips that held it to the post heavily rusted. Some of them had failed, and every time the wind gusted, the chain link panels slapped against the posts, with an eerie, high-pitched ring that echoed across the landscape. Picking a direction, he began walking the fence line. Nearly a kilometer later, he found what he was looking for: a gap in the unmaintained fence, obscured by overgrown vegetation. Adam, well aware of the potential consequences of what he was doing, took a deep breath and slipped through the break. He moved cautiously to the nearest building. The structure's exterior was unmarked, its windows opaque with reflective film. He found a side door, its hinges rusted, but the lock was stainless steel and held tight against his grasp. Continuing on, he discovered a narrow window that was missing the reflective film. Adam stared at it for several long moments as he considered what he was about to do, then picked up a stone the size of a small melon and battered the glass until he created a hole large enough to squeeze through. Inside, the facility felt like a tomb. The air was stale and heavy with the scent of ozone and disuse. Dust motes floated in the dim light filtering through the broken window. The hallways stretched out in a labyrinth of shadows. The remnants of the building's purpose were everywhere. Dormant computers lined the walls, screens dark and lifeless, keyboards coated in a layer of dust. Adam entered a large conference room and clicked on a small flashlight. The walls were covered with massive whiteboards holding impossibly long equations that were incomprehensible to Adam's untrained eye. There were also diagrams labeled as quantum fields, which were even more indecipherable. He turned a slow circle, taking it all in, then snapped pic after pic. It was as he was taking the photos that he realized there was a barely controlled chaos to the whole thing, as if it had been frantically written in an attempt to understand something that was out of control. Moving deeper into the building, he came across what seemed to be a central hub. A ring-like apparatus 100 feet across dominated the space. It made him think of a particle accelerator, but its design was a fraction of the size of any accelerator he was aware of. This felt alien, right down to a series of mysterious glyphs that were etched into its entire circumference. Adam photographed everything, being sure to include close-ups of the strange symbols. Moving on, he opened an unmarked door and stepped into an office that was immediately recognizable as belonging to a high-level executive. He rifled through the desk, then absently pressed a key on a dark computer, freezing in surprise when the screen lit up and displayed a password prompt. Adam stared at the screen for a moment, then rifled the desk again, only this time he was looking for something specific. He quickly found a small slip of paper taped to the inside of a drawer with a series of letters, numbers, and symbols. He typed in the password and the computer unlocked, displaying an email that hadn't been finished or sent. He scanned the screen, phrases like Operation Echo Chronos, quantum destabilization, and temporal divergence leaping out at him. The final line made his blood run cold. Containment protocols initiated, divergence threshold exceeded. His moment of discovery was shattered as the sound of the slamming of a heavy door reverberated through the corridors. Heart in his throat, Adam silently closed the office door before snapping 2 quick pics of the unsent email. Turning off the monitor, he squeezed into the desk's knee hole and held his breath. His heart hammered as he heard the approach of 2 distinct sets of footsteps. They were hard, sharp, and moving fast. And not alone, he realized when he heard a tinny voice coming over a radio. Adam waited silently as the sound of doors being opened reached him. The building was being searched. Squeezing as far into the desk as possible, he pulled the chair tight against his body, and it was none too soon. The office door slammed open, and a brilliant flashlight beam stabbed through the darkness. His heart pounded in his ears so loudly he was certain they could hear it beating. But after a cursory inspection, the door closed, and he was left in the dark. Afraid to breathe, Adam listened intently as the search continued. It wasn't long before the sounds faded, the searchers moving on to different areas of the building. It was time to go before they circled back or reinforcements arrived, and he seized the opportunity to try and escape. Crawling from beneath the desk, he hesitated at the door a beat before cracking it open a fraction of an inch. The sounds of the hunt were distant, and the corridor was thick with shadows. Slipping through the door, he ran on the balls of his feet, barely slowing before slipping through the broken window. Outside, he looked in fear at 4 Humvees, painted flat black with no indication of who or what they might belong to. Without slowing, he snapped some pics of the vehicles, then ran like he was being pursued by the hounds of hell. He raced across the uneven ground, his breath coming in ragged gasps, and blasted through the gap in the fence. He didn't stop until he reached his car, his hands shaking as he fumbled the keys. The engine roared to life and he sped away from the facility, the chain-link fence receding in his rearview mirror like a fading nightmare. But the nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. In a hotel room in Cape Town, Adam sat on the edge of a sagging bed, the city's lights casting a faint, ghostly glow through the thin curtains that hung limply over the window. The room was small and cramped, the air stale with the scent of mildew and old cigarette smoke, but it felt like a safe haven. He read the email he had taken a pic of and struggled to process what he had learned. The implications spiraled beyond comprehension, each thought a thread in a tapestry of dread. If timelines had been fractured, how many lives had been altered or erased? How many histories rewritten without a trace? The Mandela Effect was just the surface, a collective misremembering that hinted at a far deeper disturbance, one that threatened the very foundation of reality. He thought of the people he'd read about in conspiracy forums, ordinary individuals who swore they remembered events that official records denied, a children's book series spelled differently, a movie that never existed, a historical figure whose fate had inexplicably changed. What if those memories weren't false, but echoes of a reality that had been overwritten? Determined to expose the truth, Adam spent several days compiling his findings into a comprehensive report. He included the Saki memo, his observations, and photo evidence from the facility. Next came accounts he had collected from individuals who had experienced timeline discrepancies, people he had tracked down through online forums and cryptic emails, their stories hauntingly similar despite their disparate lives. There was a school teacher from Durban who remembered a South African election happening a year earlier than it had, a librarian from Johannesburg who swore a famous novel had ended differently in her childhood, a retired pilot who recalled a plane crash that official records claimed never occurred. Each account was a thread in the unraveling fabric of reality, and Adam wove them together with his own findings, hoping to create a tapestry that would force the world to see the truth. He distributed copies of the report to trusted journalists and archivists across South Africa and beyond, sending encrypted emails to contacts in London, New York, and Sydney, ensuring its survival should anything happen to him. He knew the risks. Marcia's warning echoed in his mind, her words a constant reminder of the forces that would kill to keep this secret buried. But as days turned into weeks, Adam noticed strange changes creeping into his own life, subtle at first, but growing more pronounced with each passing day. Friends forgot conversations they'd had with him, their puzzled expressions haunting him as they insisted they'd never spoken of certain topics. Landmarks in Cape Town appeared altered. A statue in a park he had passed countless times now faced a different direction, its plaque bearing a name he didn't recognize. A street sign he had driven past every day was suddenly in a different font, its letters glowing under the streetlights with an eerie familiarity. The shifts were subtle but persistent, a haunting reminder of the instability he had uncovered, as if reality itself were fraying at the edges. One morning, Adam awoke to find his hotel room inexplicably different, the change so jarring it sent a spike of panic through him. The desk, once positioned by the window with a view of the city's skyline, now sat against an adjacent wall, its surface cluttered with papers he didn't recognize. The shelves above it were filled with books he'd never seen, their titles in languages he couldn't read. He stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face, but the mirror reflected a stranger's eyes, his own gaze hollow and haunted. Panic gripped him as he realized the divergence was no longer theoretical. It was personal, rewriting his very existence with every passing day. He tried to call Marcia, but her number was disconnected, the operator's voice informing him that no such person had ever lived at that address. His email inbox was filled with messages from contacts he didn't recognize, their subject lines referencing events he had no memory of. A conference he had supposedly attended in Berlin, a research project he had never heard of. In a final act of defiance, Adam documented these changes, adding them to the growing archive of evidence he had compiled. He wrote of the shifting landmarks, the forgotten conversations, the books that didn't belong, hoping his words would serve as a warning to others, a beacon for those who might pick up where he left off. He knew time was running out. One fateful evening, as he typed his last entry, Adam froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, a wave of dislocation washing over him like a tide, and his vision blurring. Adam blinked, looked around in confusion, then turned back to the laptop screen. A word processing document was open, but it was blank. No words or photos or data had been entered. Adam didn't know who he was, nor had any memory beyond less than 5 minutes ago. Frightened and disoriented, he went outside, staring in disbelief at a city he had never seen before. He stood in the middle of the hotel's parking lot so long, the desk clerk became concerned and called the police. The police spoke with Adam, but he couldn't answer any of their questions. They searched him and his hotel room, but didn't find a wallet or anything that could help them figure out who he was. They fingerprinted him, but no match was found. They tested his DNA with no better results. Adam was a man who had never existed, and with no other recourse, a judge committed him to a psychiatric hospital where he was admitted as John Doe. Time marched on, no one aware of the fracture running through reality, a fracture that claimed Adam Greaves. Now, somewhere in the shadows, the forces behind Operation Echo Chronos continue their work, monitoring the ripples of a reality they shattered, their secrets safe in that place where reality frays. The stories presented are inspired by true events. Names may have been changed for privacy reasons. New episodes of When Reality Frays are uploaded every Monday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained, be sure to press that follow or subscribe button and turn on all reminders so you're alerted whenever an episode drops. Until next time, thank you for listening to When Reality Frays.